How to deal with the uncertainty of earlier approvals if we go along these lines? I think one of the solutions is the early dialogue between companies developing products and regulatory agencies. And it's a clear sign that one of the procedures of the European Medicine Agency, which is the Scientific Advice and Protocol Assistance procedure, has really been thriving over the last, let's say, 10 years or so, but mostly the last 5 years. That means that companies have probably seen a benefit in coming early, discussing their products, trying to test whether earlier approval would be possible before coming for marketing authorization in the end. This is a process that was well known across the ocean at the FDA, but has only recently become available, I would say, at the EMA. We've recently looked at the outcome of the scientific advice process, and this has been recently published. And we've seen that among the factors predicting success of marketing authorization at the CHMP, the fact of complying with the scientific advice was one of the major ones. The other factors were the size of the company, large size company, and the non-orphan status of the product. But for scientific advice, compliance with it versus, for instance, no advice, gives an odds ratio of 14. This is, of course, not a very exact number. The confidence interval is extremely large, but it is certainly beyond 1. And we are now analyzing in more detail the reasons why products with a compliance to scientific advice have a large tendency to be approved, while others do not. So we are looking into the real reasons, I would say, for this difference. Another system that has recently been proposed by the agencies, both FDA and EMA, is what is called now a qualification of novel methodologies. It used to be called validation of biomarkers, but we realized that both terms were a little bit dangerous because validation is too much absolute term. We prefer to talk about qualification for specific purposes. And then biomarkers is too restrictive because we can think of novel methodologies as also being able to accelerate drug development. For instance, adaptive designs in statistics, modeling and simulation and so on are really as important as biomarkers. So the global term is methodologies. During such a process, companies or even consortia can come to the agency and discuss the value of their biomarker or methodology, qualify it for a specific purpose, and then this procedure will end up in two ways. Either in a scientific advice, in a confidential scientific advice, if there are still important problems to be resolved, or if there is a general agreement on the value of the biomarker in a public opinion, and also a public consultation before the public opinion on the qualification. This has occurred only once so far, actually with the pilot project, so before the official launching of the qualification process. And this pilot project was really interesting because it was a dialogue, an early dialogue between FDA, EMA on one hand, and a consortium of about 13 different companies on the other hand, coming with preclinical data that they had shared. And these data were related to renal injury of new medicinal products. And this was, in the end, we qualified, both FDA and EMA qualified a number, 7 different urinary markers, such as clusterin, cystatin C, beta-2 microglobulin, and so on. Even KIM1, the problem with KIM1 is that there are some intellectual properties issues with it, but actually appeared to be the best, probably early biomarker of renal injury. So now it means that regulatory agencies have accepted to consider these biomarkers for any preclinical study detecting early renal damage. For the clinical studies, they can be used as exploratory tools, but certainly not as completely approved product tools for the time being. So this is a success, a first success, and there are many other qualification procedures ongoing or which will start very soon. Another connection between EMA and pre-competitive research is the dialogue between industry and regulators through what we call briefing meetings. That means non-binding meetings, so this is slightly different from scientific advice because it is absolutely non-binding. And we've had across the years a number of discussions about mostly pharmacogenomics, personalized medicine, drug diagnostic combinations, and so on. EMA, as you know, is also participating in PPPs, mostly IMI for the time being, and certainly the EMA participation in the IMI first call projects is significant in terms of membership, I would say, in scientific advisory boards for several projects, and also even from one project as a consortium member and as a major consortium member, but you will probably discuss this this afternoon or tomorrow. There's also an important point which has not been exploited sufficiently so far, and it's really mentioned in the IMI research agenda from last year. It's the fact that EMA owns a large amount of data related to clinical trials, for instance, or preclinical data that are not being made public, not published by companies, but that could be used to mine and to research about, for instance, evolution of diseases, comparison between different therapeutic products, and so on. Right now, a number of people have set up to try to dig this mass of information at the EMA. Of course, this project requires a lot of human resources, and we don't know how much will be invested in this regard. But it's certainly an important point that should be taken on board. Another point I'd like to mention is the connection between EMA and advanced therapies. You know that this committee for advanced therapies has been set up last year, has been working for more than 1 year now, and has actually delivered its first certification opinion. This is an important tool also for mostly small and medium-sized enterprises developing advanced therapy products, meaning that the EMA has looked into their early data, preclinical or quality data, not clinical trials, early data, and has found them relatively acceptable for future development. So it's an incentive for those companies to go on developing what are hopefully innovative products. A last point I'd like to mention here, because it's not usually discussed very much so far, it's the fact that we are talking about innovation, but we are not often talking about measuring innovation, how to measure the level of innovation and maybe compare it. We have to realize that innovation is really for the patients, so that the value of innovation is probably has to be evaluated with regard to its relative efficacy, relative effectiveness of the products deriving from this innovative research. There is a question here about the role of pricing, reimbursement committees, health technology assessment bodies, and then the role of the MEA in this program. Many people are discussing this field right now. There is no immediate solution, but I'm sure things will evolve very quickly in this area. For instance, you can read in the EMA roadmap to 2015 that there is no reason why the EMA and the HTA bodies should take different approaches to assess net health benefit, that means benefits minus risks. Then the ultimate goal is to achieve integrated medicine development for the various needs of the patients. So this point, I think, will raise and will become an important part, an important tool, how to measure the level of innovation, an important tool of the overall process. So I'd like to summarize and conclude here by reiterating that the concept of accelerating approval of innovative drugs is really a risky business for regulators. What we actually need is probably earlier and more focused knowledge. This is why PPPs are so important. More understanding of the mechanism of action before developing the clinical trials. Personalized medicine, not really broad medicines for which many patients will not benefit for sure, but more personalized medicine, and probably increased numbers of drug device and drug diagnostic developments. So companies and consortia are really advised to consider early dialogues with regulatory bodies, and there are many different ways to achieve this, from informal context to scientific advices. Maybe there should be some kind of more significant incentive or benefit for innovation itself, provided we can measure it, as I mentioned. And finally, this is the unavoidable question that we will have to consider: how to measure the level of innovation that's going to be reached in the near future. Thank you. Thank you very much.